We're here at St. Paul's Cathedral in Malacca, and at this very spot once stood the palace of Sultan Mansur Shah, who ruled Malacca from 1450 to 1477, the era now dubbed Zaman Gemilang, the golden era of the Malacca Sultanate. The glory days of Malacca provides an exotic backdrop for Malacca, a Romance, a novella by author Kamsiah Bostock, which endeavors to string together A Formosa's rich history into a moving tale that flows together. Now, using Thomas Pires, apothecary to the court of King Manuel of Portugal, and Tun Abdul, described in Sejarah Melayu as the dandy aristocrats, as her central figures, Kamsiah weaves a tale of the two meeting in Malacca at the time of the Portuguese conquest, exactly 500 years ago. Along with her husband Peter Bostock, Kamsiah started Bomo PR, a mom-and-pop public relations company, back in 1986, which grew into the largest local PR consultancy in Malaysia until it was bought over by one of Europe's largest advertising agencies in 1999. After a period of retirement, travel and cruising, Kamsiah started reading about 15th century Malacca in 2003, and so began her love affair with the historical old city.
I've always been a little bit in love with Malacca because I grew up here. And believe it or not, 50 years ago, there was still, you could feel the breeze. I walked on the seawall from my school back home every afternoon. And little did I know that this was a spot where 500 years ago, Malacca was the famous drawing card. And so I sat down after my retirement to research on the era. And I thought, oh wow, so much of this material, and it's so little known, so I decided to write a book.
In Malacca, a Romance, Kamsiah's Malacca is the thriving jewel of the Malay archipelago. At the height of its glory, the terrestrial paradise, as described by Iridia, whose perfect sheltered deep water harbour was regularly chock-a-block with thousands of sea-going vessels, blown in safely to port by the monsoon winds.
It was reported that at the height of Malacca's glory, there were 2,000 ships out there, compared to 800 in Venice, which was the other maritime power about the same time as Malacca.
So rich was the trade in spices, textiles, precious stones, gold and tin, and dispersed far and wide from China to the Meridian countries, that Malacca was simply referred to as A Formosa, translated as the famous by the Portuguese.
Well, Malacca was known as the Emporium of the East because all the ships from the Malay archipelago, ships from India, junks from China, they all gathered in Malacca. And the trade in spices, textiles, gold, tin, everything, it just was dispersed from Malacca port. It's just the tremendous trade, that actually was its downfall, because the Portuguese were so attracted by the wealth of the spices that they came out here, and as they say, that the rest is history.
Writing Malacca, a Romance turned out to be a real labour of love for Kamsiah, one that involved 7 years of research, a monumental amount of painstaking work.
But it was research interrupters. I carried on with my life and in between. And I enjoyed reading around the subject. So much so my husband said, I thought you were writing a book, why are you just reading? And then a couple of years ago, I woke up to the fact that the 2011, it's around the corner. Why don't I piggyback on the 500th anniversary? It's kind of perverse to write about the fall of Malacca, So I thought, why don't I write about the glory days of Malacca?
Using Thomas Pires's Summa Oriental, some of the commentaries from Alfonso de Albuquerque, the nobleman and admiral who conquered and established the Portuguese colonial empire in Asia, as well as the Sejarah Melayu or the Malay Annals as a source material, Kamsiah set about crafting a tale of romance and intrigue set in 15th century Malacca.
For instance, this St. Paul's Church, how it came to be built on this hill was Alfonso Albuquerque came up the hill, and I think it was the morning sun hitting the shingles on Sultan Mansur Shah's palace, and but he thought he saw a cross, and he said, that's an omen, I must build a church here. And so he burnt down Sultan Mansur Shah's palace, because of course it was a timber palace, you know. So that's why we have the church instead of Sultan Mansur Shah's palace.
With Kamsiah in tow as our knowledgeable tour guide and local historian, we took in sites of relevance to the old Malacca, traces of which have unfortunately all but vanished over the years as the city became more developed. In the affable Colin Goh, manager of Badan Warisan's number 8 Heron Street Heritage and Interpretive Centre on Malacca's quaint Jalan Tun Cheng Lok, we were fortunate to bump into a local resident just as passionate and well informed about Malacca's glory days as Kamsiah was.
So Colin, I'm so glad to have run into you, because you lived on the river. I just wrote about it. And so we are on this side of the river, which is the commercial hub of old Malacca.
That's right. And this is actually where we are at, is the actual trading area here. You know, in the old days, this was a commercial hub, actually, where the traders came, traded their goods, resided until the monsoon winds came to take them home. So this is where they would have met and bargained and bartered and so on and so forth.
Yes, and this place had the customs house?
Yes, the customs house actually in the Sultanate period, there weren't many taxes that were collected. It was more of a percentage that was paid for the trade that was done. The customs house that probably can be referred to as being here would have been the Dutch customs house.
Right,
perhaps.
yeah.
Yes.
But the Portuguese were very impressed with the huge Dutching in the customs house. Do you remember
yes.
that?
Yes, that's right. I do remember that.
Yeah.
I do remember that, the weights and measures and all that.
That's right.
So I wonder whether that got lost in the Fort de Lama of the island of Sumatra.
Right,
You know?
because they never found it,
they never
right?
found it,
Yeah.
that's right.
With the day drawing to a close, there was just time to check out a couple of more spots of historical relevance, Tanjung Kling and the Portuguese settlement. Right, Kamsiah, so now we moved away from the city into this area which you describe in your book as being called Tanjung Kling. It sounds like a really amazing area of Malacca. Tell me a bit about it.
Well, Tanjung Kling was the enclave of the very, very rich merchants. So they had the mansions and the groves and the orchards of the Arabs, the Bengalis, the Gujarati traders, and I think they would be something along the scale of this house. And it was fronting the sea. They had private yachts, and they had beautiful orchards, you know. I mean, the rich of any century, you know.
Sounds like Monaco or
Yes.
of Southeast Asia.
I think,
yachts and
yeah.
everything.
Sadly, you know, there's not a whiff of it left, but we can live in our imagination. Then there was Tanjung Kling, 6 nautical miles from the town center, but a world apart. Up the coast, where the Gujarati, Bengali and Tamil merchants lived in their beachfront, verandaless mansions. Dotted amongst them were the holiday homes of Arab merchants and court officials. Mansions and orchards of the well-heeled catching the breeze before it dissipated over the villages of the hinterland.
Right, Kamsiah, so we're here in Ujung Pasir in the Portuguese settlement. I understand that this area has a really prominent role to play in your book, is that right?
Yeah, the heroine in my book, Latifa, landed here. She came here as a bonded slave and a Bugis overlord. This was before the Portuguese took over the Bugis settlement. The Bugis formed the backbone of the Malacca Navy, and the grateful founder of the Malacca Sultanate deeded this whole area to the Bugis. And it was described by Iridia as the most beautiful real estate in all the world, because they had the best fishing grounds, and then they had the coconut plantations, and a beautiful stream of sweet water called Air Lily, which is no more, of course.
Amazing, and we just saw Jalan Iridia there as well.
Yes,
so
that's
quite
right,
and we
yeah.
can definitely get the nice sea breeze. Well, I tell you what, right, Kamsiah, you know, we've been driving around Malacca all day, and one thing that's really struck me is the way that a lot of the history that you wrote about in your book has kind of either been, you know, kind of buried or built over, almost forgotten, you know. So is your book a way of kind of like evoking that nostalgia for the old Malacca, the forgotten Malacca, do you think?
I hope so, Zach. I really hope so, because this doesn't come from me or from the Malays. It came from the Portuguese. They found Malacca to be of extremely fresh climate, that even though it's set in the torrid zone, the air is forever fresh, and the water is so sweet, and the hills were covered with aromatic woods. I mean, the way they described it, you know, made me think, oh my, you know, this Malacca is so gorgeous. And I hope that comes across in the book.
Today, Malacca is a bustling, thriving modern city on the up, with plenty of picturesque tourist attractions to recommend it by. But as Kamsiah's book Malacca, a Romance so vividly depicts, A Formosa's rich and fascinating history is one that is definitely well worth exploring in greater detail.